Okay, clean water, fresh paper towel, same colors. So let's look at the shapes on this horse a little more closely. We could start up here with the ears. You could see that the ears have got a lot of black. In fact, she sort of got a black edge on her ears. And there's quite a bit of dark in here. The back of this ear is lighter. Probably the back of that ear is too. Who knows? Okay, so I'll use a round brush for that. And here's my previously mixed gray that we still have quite a bit of. And so I'll just start right here. There's quite a bit of color there. So I probably will have to put a second bit of edge onto this. I don't think I'm going to get it in one whack. So this is nice and soupy, so I'm not going to get an edge on it. Now, 1/2 inch flat, water neutral, sort of. Let's pull that down this way. Pull this down some. That almost dried on me a little bit, that edge right there. Okay, you know, this area should have a little bit of that gray on it too. And if it's not brown enough, it's because I need more brown there. Should I pick up a little bit now? Well, maybe I will. Use a little more brown here. Could use more brown here, a lot more. I'm on dry paper, by the way. So I'm looking at this one area right here. And I'm going to soften the edge. Okay, so I put some brown into it. You can see that there's more gray there too. But what I want is, I want the color to be accumulative so that it goes even darker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the brown in, and then I'm going to add the grays on afterwards. So right here, see this whole area on this side, whoops, let's go ahead and get that ear too. This whole area on this side stays. Let's just keep on with our orangey brown. And let's soften the edge now. Water neutral brush. There. Okay, so I'm going to stay away. I'm going to work that edge just a little bit. I'm just touching it with just the corner of this flat. So then I look right here. This area is a lot darker. Comes over close to the eye. There's almost a triangle there. But then the triangle has a branch that comes off and down this way. Oh, that's grabbing into the paper pretty tightly. There. Okay. Now let's go someplace that doesn't touch that. Let's go up here. There's a dark area there that has a lot of gray to it, but there's brown underneath it. So let's put that in. Oh, and right here, coming off the side of the eye. You could do that with a round if you wanted. It's a shape kind of like that. So quickly, let's soften the edges on this. When you soften edges, don't just go off and leave it and assume that it's all going to be fine. It may not be. Sometimes the paint does naughty things when you're not looking. Just like little grandchildren and big grandchildren. That looks kind of dark. So I think I'll weaken that just a little bit. Okay, here. Now, right here under the eye, see there's a little shadow right there? That's not exactly the lower lid. That's something else. But it kind of frames the eye the way a lower lid would. Right there. Let's put that little spot in. See, there's other places that we need to work on, but I'm waiting for that to dry. So rather than running back and forth with the hairdryer, which you could do, I'm just working my way on down the front of the face. Right here, there's our extra dark spot. And you can see some shapes seem to feed into that one area. Here's veins, looks like. We're not going to do veins yet, but we could do these areas. So this little spot here is extra dark. Let's soften that edge. Don't do too much ahead before you soften the edges. What I'm noticing is that the paint is setting pretty fast here. That should break up a little bit. Let's just soften that some more. Because I've got a line drawn there, it kind of strengthens what I've just done. Well, I said I wasn't going to do veins, so that's the underneath of a vein right there. I'll just go ahead and do it anyway. I don't think I'll soften that edge. I kept that pretty light. Now there's shadow here. See, this is still darker, and I think what I needed, I think I need a little more gray into my brown, which is what I'm doing right here. This part should be really pale. I've got that on too strong. And then this part should stay pretty dark. Like that. So we're going to come back. We're going to soften this edge and give it a blot. And this one we're going to soften and not blot it. you know, I think that that shape right there is actually, that's actually part of the bridle. I'm going to put it in there because I didn't hold back a spot with masking. Okay, let's come on down. Let's see. If that's dry enough, we could start back up here. So I think that could get a little darker. And come down and looky there. And it runs down into the nose. Let's put a little gray right there. Come up this way. And let's soften some edges. Well, right now our horse looks kind of funny. Looks more like a paint than a horse. I mean, than a shapes. Let's do some deeper shapes right here, and we'll put some of the gray into that. You don't have to do this exactly the way I do it or with exactly the same colors. So I'm going to soften this edge. That's a little bit wetter spot because it's a little bit bigger. So it may act a little differently. Kind of have to watch it. Okay, let's do a little more of that. That looks pretty good. I think that needs to be a little stronger. Now let's soften the edge quickly on this. I want a bit real soft edge there. And this edge needs to soften too, but it could soften more abruptly. That is, this one, the color's fanned out. In this area, the color stays a little more in place. Well, I can see right now that I've got to have more brown, or I have to lift a highlight there and a highlight here. I may just lift a highlight. I'd like a little more color up here. I'd like this to be a little grayer. So just because now there's a video and you can see me doing everything doesn't mean that you can't use your own instincts. Oh, this little area down here, it still looks, right there, the edge looks just a little bit darker. This has been dried, remember. So I'm just going to give it a little side-to-side wash with a brush and a little blot. See if I can make that not have a line. Unfortunately, the pencil lines start showing up there. And let's fix this ear problem where I started to lengthen the ear and then realized it wasn't a good idea. Okay, I need to dry this. Okay, now, so the masking is dried. And, here. And so what I want to do, we've got the coat a little bit darker. But what I want to do now is work on the mare's face. And you will see there are some areas that stay pretty light. Oh, gee, well, let's just check. Yeah, color's not right, but it's close enough. Those are real close in value. Remember, value is always more important, especially when you're trying to make a shape. So, or that is, you know, a face, the shape is more important than the color. So, okay, well, here, let's see. let's look at this area on the cheek. Well, there we need to go a lot darker. There are some areas that are a little bit lighter on here, but we're gonna work mostly to attain that value. I'm just picking up where we were, and we have our three colors that we were working with: the Prussian blue, the Quin Gold, and the Quin Burnt Scarlet. And from those, we had made a brown and a gray. So I definitely need a lot more brown. And I have pre-wet my color in my palette so that I can get quite a bit more out. Okay, here. And let's go and get some gold. Let's see. So remember what we worked towards was this kind of an orange, and you can see, oh, that's too bright, and it's not yellow enough. That's way too red yet. So we need a lot more gold. I was concerned about getting too much, and now I realize I'm not getting enough. Let's get a little more. Oh, this ought to last for the rest of the painting. I've got so much. So let's see what color this looks like. Okay, see, that's a little more yellow. Okay. It's not going to be bad by the time that we add a little Prussian blue into it. Now, again, when adding Prussian blue, be cautious. Don't add too much at a time. Well, I can see that got darker, but I can see that I need a little more. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, see, that's sort of a natural, almost a natural horse color right there. Okay, so if I'm going to need it to be a little bit lighter, but we're going to achieve that by wetting the horse down first. And I'm just wetting down everything here. And part of the reason, again, for the masking on the bridle is so that we can continue a stroke here and on down, and it looks continuous. So, lots of water, lots of water. Oh, by the way, speaking of that, I made a mistake on your drawing because I drew this to here as the tip of the ear. And then I made a little dark place. The ear should come up here. Okay. That'll look more right for a horse's ear, I think. We'll come back and fix that later. But I wanted to remember to draw that in while I was thinking about it. Okay, so lots of water. You know, and I'm just going to tilt this up and look at it. Make sure that it's really soupy. I didn't go quite to all the edges. I got pretty close. Okay, so there we go. Now, a little time should pass by, da-da-da-da-da. Okay. So I've got all this. I'm going to move this stuff. Okay. And I've got a gray over here. I better pre-wet that a little bit. Let's get a little bit of pale gray over here. Okay, now we're ready. Whoa, got water running everywhere. So I am going to squeeze my brush out. And I'm going to pull it over this now and make sure that I've got some of the water off of here. I should still have a shiny wet surface. And remember, what we've let happen is we've got a little bit of the water has soaked into the paper. So that's buying us a little bit of time as we work. I've got my 1/2 inch brush, and I've got a 3/4 inch brush, which I find is really useful for something about this size. I used to never use one, but it's really quite helpful. So let's pick up a little color here. Let's see what happens when we put it on. Well, it's flowing out quite a bit. See all the little funny edges on it? So that'll be fine to work with. And I don't want the red totally up in the mane. Here, let's pull that out. I wanted it around the edges of the mane. I'll probably have to watch that. Come back to it and clean it up. But in the darkest area, it makes a richer black. I guess we could call that a black mane. So let's get some color down here first. It's going to dry a little lighter and a lot duller. Watercolor is a duller medium just because it's matte. Okay, let's be careful how far we come down here. Okay. Maybe I'll start using the 1/2 inch brush. Well, let's see. Wait a minute. Let's make a water neutral brush. And I'm going to work with this area down here first. Actually, I've pretty much got what I want down here. I was going to manipulate it a little bit, but really don't need to. Okay, so come back up here and let's look. We could go ahead and pull a little bit more dark right in this area. Mostly, I want to build that up and make it accumulative. Remember, when you do this, you're also pushing some of your reddish brown out of the way. So, I don't know how much of this I want to do. You know, I want it to dry and I want to see what I've got. Let's see, we need a little more reddish brown right up under here. Now let's make a water neutral brush. And let's play with it a little bit. This area, right through here, see that's a little lighter. And of course we're going to build in more darks, but I think we could pull up a little bit right along there. And remember, the paint will flow and fill back in, so I've got to add a little bit of water here. And let's go ahead and lighten this area a little bit. Well, I'll tell you what. We're going to have to paint a shadow in here later, because it's a pretty small shadow. See this shadow right here? That's a pretty small shadow, and I think it's pretty hard to make it work with what I'm doing right here. So I think I'm going to put a little paint up right there. So you see we've got this kind of streak here. Oh, well, it's not quite right, because this area is lighter too. No, it's not that much lighter. Let's leave that. Do I want to pull any up here? I guess I'll pull it just a little bit. Now here, right along here is an area that's really highlighted, here and here. And I really want to get those two. Those are big areas. So Let's suck up some paint first. And let's drop in a little water. That'll push some of that paint back out of the way. Comes over there too, there's a little spot there. And then I'm going to pull up more of it. And I'll add a little water back in. Just a tiny bit of water. If you add too much, then you have a problem. So let's come over here and let's do this spot. This is so soft edged as you're working that if it's not quite, I'm adding a little water. If it's not quite right, you have plenty of chances to alter it. Okay, I'm going to squeeze that up. See? You begin to get a soft, gentle shape there. Because if you overshape this, it can look too mechanical. Okay, that's enough right there. You can see when you look at this, you say, yeah, but look, that's darker here, and right there is different, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but we're going to add that in separately. This will be right when we add a dark in here. This shape will be right here. So, I still want, actually, if you look at the head and forget about these little dark shadows in here, this whole area here is a little lighter. That's darker than this spot, but the general thing comes down like this. So let's do that. I didn't get very far pulling paint up a while ago, so I'm going to add water. And you remember, the water is drying. The water and the paint are drying as we've been working. So it could act a little differently. There's the water. Now let's squeeze this out. And let's pull up. See, I want those nice soft edges. And then we've got to fill it back in with just a tiny bit of water. There's a shape here. I think we're fine. I think this, what I'm going by, I'm looking and I'm seeing shapes there, but I'm also looking for how dark this is. See, and this isn't near that dark yet, so it's going to work fine the way it is, I think. Well, maybe I could pull just a teeny spot up there. That's kind of extra red. This isn't making a back run because I've pulled up the water after I did it. Oh, I got that too light. I think what I need to do is quit messing with it. I think that's pretty good for this pass. Now, I could see a little bit of a back run here. This edge is a little darker than it is right next to it. So I'm going to squeeze out my brush. Remember, this has been drying, so it's not near as sensitive as it was several minutes ago. I'm just going to drag the brush over that. I'm not even pressing down. That's just the weight of the brush. See, we got rid of that slightly darker edge there. Now, let's do it again. Yeah, there. Okay, so we have a tip of the ear that's incorrect. Now, I didn't wet down this whole ear. So, let's come up here. Let's add to the tip of the ear. Well, that's not going to be... Whoops. I got out of the line. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to come back to it later. Because this spot right here actually needs to lift a little bit. Unfortunately, we have a line drawn in there. You know, it might be better just to leave that alone and let that ear be short. Because now I don't know about you, but I traced this line so dark that that would be pretty hard to get rid of. So I'm going to forget about fixing that. In fact, now, well, we'll leave that for the moment. So let's go over here and let's darken the coat a little bit more. He's got this beautiful, interesting cast shadow here. I'm going to move it over just slightly. And I'm going to do an approximation of it. Now, I don't want to get, you probably can't see this on the video, because I don't want to get this too dark. There's the shadow from his ear. And then this shape just comes down and then comes over. Goes away. So what I'm going to do is, going to wet the little baby down here. Let's wet this whole area. I'm sticking with my 3/4 inch brush now because he's smaller. So let's come down. You know, I shouldn't have wet that spot. Let's wet around that. Let's just wet up here and down here close to the line I drew, but not all the way to it. Okay, 1/2 inch brush. Let's put in some more red. I'd rather have him a little too red than too gray here. That's pretty gray. I don't want it to be that boring. So let's add in a little bit more red along here. And actually, I didn't wet this down, I don't think, but we could use a little more red right up in here too. Well, actually, we could use a little more red in several places. That's kind of nice. Okay. I'm just going to keep this basically kind of flat. So I'm adding color into the water areas, and then I'm just going to pull the wet areas up to the line that I drew. So here, see, I'm adding that to that water, and then I'm just going to pull it over. I need to turn this to make it a little easier to do. Again, because this is a cast shadow, we don't want a noticeable line or darker edge here, because that'll take away the look of a shadow. Oh, that's nice. Okay. While that's drying, and I still need to keep an eye on this, but I think it's pretty much dry enough. It's pretty safe. Okay, so let's work on the tongue color a little bit. And I think that all we need here is that we need to go back to our pure Quin Burnt Scarlet. Let's just put a tiny bit down right here. And let's put a tiny bit of gray into it. Oh, I think we need a little bit more. Oh, whoa. Yeah, I think that may work. Look, let's get just a little bit more red into it. A little bit more of the burnt scarlet. There. Now, I might want to take a round brush for this. So I have something small and pointy. Let's prime that brush by getting it wet and squeeze it out. And let's just look at the shadows on the mother's tongue. Whoop, I don't have my brush loaded up well enough. See, I made this tiny amount of paint, and it wasn't enough to load up this brush. This brush is a little bit bigger. So in order for the brush to work right, more water, more gray, there. So now I have the brush loaded up. And I'm going to rake it off there a little bit. Okay, here we go. So I'm just looking at the shapes on the tongue. That's a little too red. Well, why am I not stopping then if it's too red? Well, that's a good question. Guess it'd take good sense to have sense enough to stop. Tell you what we'll do. We will just drop a little gray in here. And that's too dark. So then let's give it a little blot. I think a little more gray. See, you can keep painting into this as long as it's good and soupy wet. I think we need a little more dark right there. So that would be better with some edges softened. And that's a tiny spot. So what I plan to do is I plan to soften it with my soft lifting brush when it's dry. Okay. Well, while we're here, this little area right here looks darker on her than it does on mine. See, the inside of the nostril kind of flattened out into nothing. So I think we need a little bit more gray in here. In fact, we'll get this darker while we're at it. Oh, I forgot that that's wet. That's still damp. Gee. Well, in that case, let's squeeze it out and pull some of this up. We'll go back and fix it later. Yeah, that wasn't so smart. Didn't realize how much moisture I still had in that area. I must have pulled it down, the water all the way down there a while ago. Okay, so we're at a stopping point. You can notice that I've accumulated a little bit darker edge along right there. And we'll fix that again in a little bit. So I'm going to stop for a few minutes. Okay, this is lesson 3. We're going to start out doing just a little bit of masking. I'm going to quickly go through the basics again in case someone hasn't seen this. Okay, nice big squirt of dishwashing liquid. A little bit of water. Okay. Paper towel. Synthetic brush with a good point. Must be a synthetic brush. I'm using PBO drawing gum. So what I want to do is I want to get these white spaces in here. I'm not going to mess with this down here, but I want these areas in. Again, I just put my brush about halfway down into the masking fluid, and I'm kind of raking a drip off the tip. So I'm kind of making an uneven edge on here. And the masking fluid doesn't have to be thick. Okay, at this point, every 20 seconds or less, wash that brush out. See, I'm really scrubbing it against the bottom. I'm not jamming it down that way, messing with the tip, but I'm scrubbing against the bottom. And I'm squeezing it out. Never put a dry brush in your masking fluid. Never, 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 never. So I want an edge that's just a little bit, not totally smooth because I don't want it to look mechanical. Squeeze it out. There. Now I want to be sure I fill in the center because I'm going to be pushing paint all the way across over here. And let's do the Colt's little face too. Let's get this little thing. I didn't mess with this tag on his halter, by the way. You could put it in if you wanted to. So this one you can kind of see the growth direction of his hair. He's got a little bit of a cowlick on his face. There, I think that'll do. Okay, wash it out and wash it out in the water.